Hello everyone, today I'll start my series of videos where I'll be explaining how to get started with PIC microcontrollers from absolute scratch, including how to select microcontrollers, read their datasheets, and how to write and load your program into these microcontrollers. These videos will start for absolute beginners, but eventually I'll work my way up into more complicated and bigger projects. We will first start with installing the program I'll be using to write our codes, the name of which is MPLAB IDE, published by the producers of PIC microcontrollers Microchip. There are other IDEs out there and even some more Arduino-like, but MPLAB IDE is the official IDE from Microchip, so you can expect more features and support in general. It also gets updated over time and has support for pretty much all the PIC microcontrollers. Even though it is an official IDE, you'll see that it is pretty intuitive to use after getting used to. There's also a visual documentation online for most of the questions you might have, which I'll be linking down below. But most importantly, of course, it is free. There's paid versions, but it is definitely not necessary for the average user at home. Paid version supposedly has better optimizations, but from my experience, the free version has pretty good optimization to begin with. It removes unnecessary codes, which you can check yourself by inspecting the assembly code generated after building. If you don't know what that means, don't worry, I'll be talking in more detail about it in the future when I explain debugging. Before we start, you might also be asking what is an IDE. Well, it stands for Integrated Development Environment, and what you're developing here is your code. It is essentially a program that you write your code in. An IDE combines a bunch of tools like autocomplete, spell checking, code folding, and way more that I can't honestly fit here. These functionalities make that coding experience better and easier. Keep in mind that these functionalities are also arbitrary, and some of the more lightweight IDEs might not implement everything that you think are essential. And that is also why most of the bigger IDEs support plugins, which can be official or written by third-party sources that you can install and customize your coding experience however you like. And with all those said, in this video I'll be showing you for the MPLAB IDE how to install, uninstall, and access your project's folder for backing them up for maybe saving them to another drive, or for copying them somewhere else in your computer for more peace of mind. And if you want to skip to any of these categories, you can use the timestamps in the video slider down below. I'll first show you how to access your default project folder in case you want to back them up, maybe before uninstalling. And if you've never used this IDE, don't worry, that means you have no projects to back up anyways. And if you follow my tutorials, you will know how to use the IDE and can always come back to this video later when you need to. I have here MPLAB IDE and IPE, but don't worry about the IPE. I'll be explaining their differences in the installation part of this video, and frankly 99% of the time you won't be using the IPE anyways. When I open up my MPLAB, you'll see that it uses dark mode, but the MPLAB doesn't actually have dark mode built into it. When you install your MPLAB, it will be in light mode, but don't worry, I'll be making another short video for how to make your MPLAB dark mode along with other basic customizations in the future. Now I have a project open here. I have some files, some logic folder, and some more files inside of them. Some header files here. Now this is your project tab, and on this tab all of your files are organized by MPLAB so you can navigate your way around easily. But this is not how your project is physically stored on your PC. If you go to the Files tab above, you'll see the actual project file saved in your system. If you open your project up, you can see all of these files again, but this time they are all in the same location as opposed to the Project tab where they were organized in logical folders. You will also see some more files exist here that we didn't see in the Projects tab. These are the files MPLAB uses to store internal things to properly build and organize this project. You can load a project from anywhere you want, from your desktop if you want, but most people will usually use the default directory automatically generated by MPLAB on project creation. By default, the project save location should be your user directory, and if you want to find where that is, you can use the button up here, which is for opening a project. When you click it, the initial path that opens will be the default project location, which you can simply copy, then open a file explorer, and put that path in, and there you go. And if I go one above, as you can see, this is my user directory. And if you want to back up your projects, you can simply copy this file. I'm going to copy this file to my desktop for later use in this video, but you can just as easily copy it to another drive, or better yet, an external drive. I've used this IDE for years now, but I've only had one instance where I had to uninstall and make a clean install since the IDE would refuse to build my projects and I couldn't find the solution to the given error code, which might have been due to plugins and not MPLAB itself, so you will likely not need to do this, but I may as well show it here anyways. As with all Windows applications, uninstalling an app is straightforward. Open your control panel, and if you don't have it on your taskbar, you can simply search control panel on start menu. Simply press uninstall program, find MPLAB IDE, right-click, and press uninstall. On this screen, it's up to you to choose whichever option you want, since it depends on why you want to uninstall the MPLAB in the first place. You shouldn't lose your project files since they aren't stored in your MPLAB's program directory, but if you want to have more peace of mind, you can back them up as shown in the previous part of this video. For me, when making this video, it did not remove my projects in my user directory, but I can't guarantee that this will be the case for you as well, so I suggest you make a copy of them anyways. For me, because not deleting all of the persistent files ends up saving some of my configurations, I'll be choosing the delete all option so that I can show you how the program looks when doing a clean install. After the uninstallation is complete, note that MPLAB IPE also got uninstalled, so you don't have to separately uninstall it. And that should be it for uninstalling MPLAB. Pretty simple. Now for how to install MPLAB. As with installing most of your programs, simply open your browser and search MPLAB download. Click the official Microchip website, click View Latest Downloads, click MPLAB X IDE Windows to start downloading. After your download is completed, you can click the exe file to start installing. Click Next, accept the agreement, and Next again. It's up to you to agree to these options to send back information to Microchip, but I'll personally disable these. Click Next. Here you can choose what to install and not install depending on your needs, but I suggest you download all of them. You don't need to download the IPE, but since it's small and may be useful somewhere along the line, I suggest downloading it anyway. Even if you won't be using it 99% of the time, you might actually need it when that 1% happens. I also suggest downloading all of the PIC microcontroller supports, since you might migrate to 16 or 32-bit microcontrollers in the future, and downloading them now might save you extra work later, but it is up to you. I'll only be covering the 8-bit microcontrollers since they are easy to learn for beginners. Click Next and your installation should start. After your installation is completed, you will be shown this screen. You can launch MPLAB IDE or IPE now, but I suggest you don't for now as there's still one more step to be able to use the IDE properly. After that, you will need to check this box right here, and the reason for which I will get back in a minute. Download MPLAB Harmony Integrated Software Framework and configure MHC. Now this is like a plugin that you can install that makes configuring 32-bit microcontrollers a lot easier, since their registers are huge and they are more feature-packed in general. And it is hard to navigate their datasheets like you would with an 8-bit microcontroller. It makes it more intuitive and graphical to configure them. However, this is exclusive for 32-bit microcontrollers. I will only be using 8-bit microcontrollers in these tutorials, and since I usually prefer ARM-based 32-bit microcontrollers when I need high processing power, I will be unchecking this box, but it is again up to you. Down here is a big one, MPLAB Code Configurator. If you don't know what it is, you can simply type in YouTube MPLAB MCC to see what it looks like, but personally I won't be using it. I also don't suggest using it if you want to go further than beginner level on programming microcontrollers, as it hides the process of reading the datasheet and understanding how the microcontroller ticks. It will make migrating between microcontrollers harder and in general make it harder to understand how a microcontroller operates under the hood, which will cause you headaches eventually. But you can still check this box and use it whenever you want, of course. It is not a must, and if you want to quickly test something, this can be an easy way to save you from having to read the datasheet. It is again up to you. Now let's get to the option we skipped. XC compiler are not installed with the IDE. What is a compiler, you might ask? Compilers and IDE are different things, but in general an IDE will include a compiler. Some IDEs might come with a compiler pre-installed, but for the case of MPLAB it doesn't, and you have to install it separately. A compiler is what turns your human-readable code into machine code that you can then put into your microcontroller, while an IDE is what makes writing that code a faster and better experience. Why are they separate for MPLAB, you might ask? Well, more microcontrollers come into market over time, and support for these microcontrollers as well as bug fixes are handled separately than the others. So by separating them, the IDE and the compiler can also be updated separately depending on the situation. Also, you might need to change how you write your code between compiler versions. By making them separate, you can choose whichever version of a compiler you want to use with the IDE. This approach is also supported further by the fact that 8, 16, and 32-bit microcontrollers have different compilers for them, since they have completely different architectures inside. Now that the explanation is out of the way, simply select this box and click Finish, which will take you to the website for downloading compilers. Click View Download, click Compiler Downloads, and you will have three options: XC8, XC16, and XC32, which, as their name suggests, are for 8-bit, 16-bit, and 32-bit microcontrollers in order. Since I will only be using 8-bit microcontrollers, I'll be downloading XC8 only. Simply click and start your download. After the download is complete, click the exe file. Note that this will not be a separate executable program, but instead it will be a package that your MPLAB IDE will pick up, so don't expect a shortcut on your desktop. Click Next, accept the agreement, and click Next again. Next, 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 and Next again, and your installation should start. After your installation is complete, simply hit Next, and then Finish. You can now delete your installers and start writing your code in the IDE. Now, before ending the video, I want to talk about what this IPE is, since I probably won't be touching it again. IDE stands for Integrated Development Environment, while IPE stands for Integrated Programming Environment. Most of the time you program a microcontroller, you will be using a file with an extension of .hex. This hex file directly contains the machine code for your microcontroller. The difference between the MPLAB IDE and IPE is the speed and ease of use. In fact, almost anything you can configure in the IPE, you can configure in the IDE as well. So the IDE has the IPE inside of it, but the difference is, whenever you want to program your microcontroller using the IDE, you have to open it, which is a lot bigger and more complicated piece of program, which takes a long time to load. Not to mention, you have to build your project each time to program your microcontroller, which depending on your project size can take a long time. Not to mention, you generate the assembly and the machine code each time as well, which also takes time. But if you have a generated hex file that contains your tested, working code, and you want to load that to a bunch of microcontrollers, or you want to simply load without the hassle of starting an IDE, that is when you would use the IPE. And of course, you can generate the hex file for your project in the MPLAB IDE. If none of that made sense to you, don't worry. You can always come back to this video later when you need to. If you keep watching my videos, you should get what those terms I've used mean in the near future. This is what the MPLAB IPE looks like. It looks a lot simpler than the IDE, which is the whole point. You can select the target microcontroller here from the menu, then load your hex file here by browsing, and simply click Program to upload your code into your microcontroller. And of course, you have to select your programmer from here, which can be a Picket 3 or MPLAB ICE or whatever you have. After plugging them in, they should show up here and you can choose them. Just hit Program and you can program your microcontroller. No need to build, no need to launch a big IDE just to be able to program your microcontroller. There are also other things you can tweak if you want. Simply go to the Settings tab above and click Advanced Mode. Since this is a clean install, the password is microchip as the hint says below. After entering the advanced mode, the UI will change a little, and you can go through the tabs on the left to change various settings, one of the most important being the power. If you want to quickly program your microcontroller, instead of powering it from a separate source, you can use the programmer's power directly, and this is where you would do it. You can set different voltages to program, since not every microcontroller is made for 5 volts, which is the default. You can also change the VPP value, which is the voltage used to put PIC microcontrollers into programming mode. You give high voltage like 13 volts for a short duration to the VPP pin, and the microcontroller goes into programming mode, which is called high voltage programming. We'll talk about that more in the future. You can also change various settings in the other tabs, but most of the time you won't be touching these, and I won't go into detail about them since that is out of the scope of this video. Let's open the IDE before ending the video so you can see what it looks like on a fresh install. As you can see, it is in light mode, and I will show you how to put dark mode in MPLAB in a future video. After the IDE launches, you will be greeted with the start page. If you don't want this page to open up each time you launch the IDE, you can uncheck the Show on Startup checkbox down here. Close the start page as well, and now you can start writing your code. You can close the Services tab here since you won't be using it much. You can reopen them again afterward if you want. You will see that our project folder is empty. Like I said in the uninstall part of this video, you shouldn't lose your projects, but the IDE shows no projects here. Don't be alarmed, just because there's a project file on your PC doesn't mean that MPLAB will pick it up automatically. You open and close projects that you want in the IDE. In fact, if you click Open Project button above, you will see that my projects are still here. If you want to open up a project, you can right-click and create a new project, or if you have an existing one, click Open Project, and simply click the project file and press Open Project, and it should simply open up in the IDE. As you can see, I still have the same files as before when I backed them up. You can also see them in Files tab, they are still here. You can also open projects from wherever you want, say for example your desktop. I copied my project's desktop in backup part of this video, so I can use them as an example. I will simply click Open Project, navigate to Desktop, find the MPLAB X projects folder, choose a project to open and click Open Project. Let me close this file and open the main file of the new project. And as you can see, I can see all the files of the project, no problem. I can even build the project. And as you can see, it builds successfully, no problem. Don't worry about what building a project means if you don't know. I'll explain it further in a later video. You will also see some warnings. That is just me building code files for testing and not using them in the actual code. It's not an error. One note I want to add, I've had problems previously where loading a project to a new installation gave error codes due to mismatching compiler versions, so be wary. Of course the problem went away after installing the version I originally used for the project. Just something to look out for if you get an error. And this is the end of the video, and thank you for watching. If you liked the video, you can always leave a like and subscribe. It's always appreciated, and I'll see you in the next video.